Hey, Michael Oku, thank you for talking to me today. We're just hours really after your match with MJF at Summer Sizzler. So, firstly, like, how are you feeling right now?
I feel bruised and battered. It was a long weekend in general. So
Hmm.
that was my third match of the weekend. I
Wow.
was in WXW the day before, having two matches, wrestling 20 minutes, and then I was in a Royal Rumble, their Royal Rumble type match. So then to get on the plane, to then be in that environment of York Hall to wrestle MJF and to take the moves I did, I'm
Hmm.
feeling it, but I'm doing okay.
When was the idea of facing MJF first brought to you?
So it was Andy that said, "Hey, he called me being like, "Hey, this is urgent. Can you call me?" And I was like, "Oh no, what's happened? What have I done? Or what have you done? Is the company dead? What's going on?" That was his immediate worry was my first thought when he wanted to urgently speak to me. And I had heard that he was looking to change the date of a Rev Pro. So Rev Pro schedule
Hmm.
was slated to change. August 11th, it was scheduled to be a show in Southampton at the 1865, which is a really good venue, but it's fairly small. It can probably get maybe 300 people in. And he told me, okay, well, we're changing venues because we have a big match. The big match is you, and it's against MJF. I was like, okay, okay. So he said, but it wasn't even a proper done deal. At least he
Hmm.
didn't feel it was. He was just like, he feels like it's a done like it's certain because the conversation between Maxwell and Andy, it was direct between the two of them, and they
Yeah.
had a relationship beforehand. So he felt like he could trust that this is going to happen if he said it was going to happen. But until Andy told me he received a video filmed by MJF,
Hmm.
that's when I was like, okay, it's on. It's happening.
That is not a lot of time to prepare for you for like everything that comes with facing someone like MJF. How is that like getting ready for it?
Do you know what? I with most matches, I try and do so much research and I try and really focus specifically on that person I'm wrestling and try and study their stuff so I can come up with stuff for the match. It's weird when you're wrestling someone who you yourself have been watching on
Hmm.
TV for
Hmm.
a good few years now. So there was already things that I was aware of that he did that made me come up with ideas in my own head. And in terms of the pressure, this has been a weird year in terms of pressure because I've had a lot of high profile matches this year and in front of a lot of people. So the nerves of that weren't there anymore. The nerves for me were came with just like the expectation of what they expect from an MJF match and the expectation of what they expect from me, who, if the wider, again, once again, if the wider wrestling world is going to tune in, they're likely not to know me and they are likely to know MJF. So I've really got to make sure that I believe in what I can do and I put my best foot forward.
How did you feel when you saw MJF started doing this pro America gimmick? You're a British wrestler, the British champion. What kind of like preparation like did you do for how things might go with him in this current form?
So yeah, when I saw the whole American gimmick transpiring, and I was like, oh, it was the aha moment of like, okay,
Hmm.
I see where this is going. Okay. Um, and in my head, he gets a lot of heat, which I guess is by design in his own way. If it's the kind of heat he wants, I don't know. But I knew he was going to push those buttons in a way that he might get in huge trouble for, especially if he's going to different countries. Mexico are super patriotic, so I knew when he was going there, I was like, he has to be careful. UK is kind of different. We kind of hate our country, so
Yeah.
we're not super patriotic about it. And if people are super patriotic about being British, we question their their character. So it was an odd one, just him getting things wrong. Even just saying the Euro Cup, that arguably gets more heat than saying I hate the king. You know what I mean? So um I knew that there was going to be jabs thrown at me, but I knew that no matter what, I just have to. I'm not going to be like, well, I'm British and I'm going to fight for my country. I'm just still going to be like, I'm Michael Oku. I'm this wrestler that wants to beat you, this top wrestler. That's all I focused on.
Did he say anything that you thought was a little bit too far, like before the match or during the match?
Um, for me, no. There was what did he? It's so funny. Like there was a lot of things that I saw other people getting offended with.
Yeah.
Some things I saw were deleted and stuff like that. But for
Mhm.
me, the one thing that actually irked me was a tweet where he called me Osprey's protege.
Yeah.
And I know everyone was probably thinking that I'd hate other things, but when he called me protege, I was like, no, 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 no. That's not what's going on here. Osprey, Osprey was not a fan of me when I started wrestling. I was very much his rival. We had a very legitimate like button of heads in terms of how good he thought I could be, and
Mhm.
my aspirations for myself. So the story there is, we're rivals.
Yeah.
So I didn't want it to be that, this guy with this huge reach kind of puts it out there that I'm an Osprey clone when
Yeah.
I do not wrestle like Will Ospreay.
Mhm.
For primarily, I don't want that out there because I cannot wrestle like Will Ospreay. So I don't want people to think that they're gonna expect to see that, and I just don't live up to that. So I was like, oh no, I wish I didn't say that. That was my main thing, honestly. That like, ugh.
Were there any concerns when you got the match brought to you about facing MJF because he's a title holder in AEW and you're the current undisputed British heavyweight champion and like wrestling politics like do come into play? So like did you have any concerns on that front?
Of course there was. I knew there was going to be a bit of a game when it came to that, a political game
Mhm.
in terms of the business side of it. I think Andy jumped at the offer because business wise, okay, you can like essentially last minute book a York Hall venue, sell it out. Of course you'd want to do that, but at the same time, if this is the person he wants to wrestle, well, he's my champion. In 2 weeks' time, he's main evented, defend that championship. We have to find something that works for what you're doing, but also that works for us. And I know, like with Rev Pro and Andy, he's big on trying to make sure that he gets something out of these situations,
Yeah.
more so than just the income he generates from doing a York Hall venue. He's trying to see what can help with his story. So I think there's the key thing was as long as we were able to implement something for our story and for my match at the Copper Box, which we did, then we were happy to play ball, so to speak.
Hmm. On that, like Tony Khan, he used to go to RevPro like before AW ever existed. So he's had that relationship with Andy. So how do you think like AEW and RevPro's relationship should develop that best serves RevPro as a smaller partner?
I think it really helps when there's a talent that comes down to us and wants to wrestle our guys. It
Hmm.
elevates our talent, and then I feel there's actually a bit of a creative juice that
Yeah.
they get to fulfill when the AEW talent come over here for RevPro. I think it's fairly clear that this was all MJ did. I
Hmm.
think let's just put that out there. This is all his idea. He was not contractually obligated to do a RevPro date.
Yeah.
He messaged Andy and said, "I want to wrestle Michael Oku at your call," and Andy made it happen. So there's an enjoyment, there's something special about wrestling for our promotion, and then there's a great thing where if you wrestle someone who is at that level, even if you don't wrestle them, he might watch other matches and give feedback and help the other people that are on the card, and you can learn that way. As well, I've heard a rumor that AEW's roster is bloated, so you can't get everyone on every show. You
Yeah.
you just can't. That's just the nature of any company, really. So it would benefit if hey, why don't you send, I don't know, if Private Party were announced for the Great British Tag League.
Hmm.
I think that would be beneficial for them. I think it'll be beneficial for RevPro. And then they can come back, wrestle a lot of our guys, and then they can come back as who knows, maybe they've learned something. I think Anthony Ogogo is a great example of that, of someone who, he was thrown into the deep end, having one of his first ever wrestling matches on pay-per-view against Cody Rhodes. people judged him, just based off how his ability of being inexperienced. He's improved so much, but no one got to see it. He was here. I think it was Tony Khan that asked Andy to use him, I believe. And then Agogo was then asking himself to do Rev Pro shows. He's then wrestling a lot of our guys, and we have very, very talented wrestlers. I think world-class professional wrestlers in our roster. We just don't have the exposure. But with that, a person like Anthony Agogo is then going to learn from us. And I think he had a little stint, a little excursion. I know he's British, but an excursion here in Rev Pro. I really do think that improved his game. And I'm actually excited and hopeful that Tony Khan then uses him on AEW and he can then show people how much he's improved. So I think it helps in that way too.
For sure. How would you like rate the atmosphere of the MJF match compared to the other like big match? Because you've been having a lot of big matches within like the last year or two. How would you compare them?
I think that's number one in
Yeah.
terms of the hottest crowd. Maybe it's recency bias, but it was comparing that match with the match I had with Will earlier in the year at Crystal Palace. It's because of the venue.
Yeah.
Because York Hall was so packed and so rammed. If I'm sure there was a fire safety issue, but
Don't say that.
maybe I shouldn't say that. But it was so packed, and they were so excited to see. It's one of those things where you could see the fans not believing that they were going to see a star at the caliber of MJF that close and personal. As well as that, if the only thing I would pat myself on the back on is I feel like I did enough to put the element of belief that I might actually win this championship. I think there's been a lot of all the AEW International, American, All Atlantic Championship matches that have happened outside of the company of AEW. I don't think at any point anybody believed that the title was going to change hands. I think they just thought, oh, this is cool, this is happening. And it ends there. But I think I was able to add enough element of doubt that, actually, it could make sense that Michael might actually win here. That added to the atmosphere of people really being behind me. And then, of course, people then naturally really being behind MJF. So the concentration of the noise from the balcony to below us, yeah, that's number one.
Yeah, it looked really heated on, like I was watching the on demand live and it looked like I had such FOMO for not being there because it looked so cool.
It was also literally heated. It was boiling hot. I can't stress you. I think fans were probably like in agony because of the heat. So when I did my entrance, when I took my jacket off, I was glistening, pouring, and I didn't even do anything. I sauntered slowly to the ring. I don't run around, and I was like, this is going to be tough. My wrist tape was falling off, everything, just because of all the sweat. So it was boiling hot in York Hall.
Yeah, to be fair, the live report I got just said sweaty when I asked how it was before the match.
Yeah,
sweaty.
Absolutely.
So I have to ask, there was a report from Fightful saying that there'd been discussions about you and Amira and being involved in Dynamite in Cardiff or All In this month. So what can you tell us about that? Tough question, I know.
I know. I'm trying to find the right way to answer this. I think that's the most I can confirm, is that there's been contact made, which obviously makes sense.
Yeah.
I've wrestled Will early in the year in front of Tony Khan. I got to meet Tony Khan and have a conversation with him there at the venue as it happened. This match happens with MJF. They've posted, my promo on their channels. They're promoting this. So there's been contact to allow these things to happen with AEW. And so there's been contact of what we could potentially do in the future.
Fair enough.
I'll leave it there.
What would be the ideal scenario for you?
Wembley Stadium. I would have thought in my head, I was like, it would be cool if I just, I won this title. They have a non-title match. They don't need the title, and I wrestle someone for the title at Wembley Stadium. But I would love to have a step up from last year. It was cool to experience being around all the boys and girls in the back, to do something, to be involved and have some kind of role in the show. But I feel like I've made enough of a name of myself in this country that
Yeah.
if a big show is happening in this country and there's enough of a crossover with the AEW fans, at least the UK fans, that there would be some interest to see me do something. And I'm if it's small, but a wrestling capacity as Michael Oku, as me, the wrestler on the show. So, hey, there's a casino gauntlet as well.
Mhm.
That's the one where they just come in at random intervals, right? So
Yeah.
there could be surprises there, and I'll be very happy if my music as well plays. That would be very cool if my music plays at Wembley Stadium.
Well, your music plays nonstop when you play Fight Forever. Have people been telling you that?
Yeah, that's the thing. So people, especially now, again, it's coming up again where they're like, "Oh, he uses that song from Fight Forever," and I just want it to be known that I used the music first,
Mhm.
then Mikey Ruckus put it. It wasn't even public. Then he put it on Spotify, so it
Mhm.
was on his own album, and then the AEW game came out, and then they put that song on. So just
Yeah.
so everybody has the record straight, it's my song before it's the AEW Fight Forever song. It was in the pandemic. You were there, Stephanie.
I was gonna say I was there. And we were like, you were saying you wanted like an Evanescence style song, and I'm pretty sure we were like listening to it outside when we were filming during the pandemic. Yes.
You were probably right beside me when I heard it for the first time
Yeah.
because Andy was like, "We're gonna need you to use some new music." I was like, "Oh no!" I was just so happy with the music I had before. What I told him, the notes I had for him, I was like, "It needs to have. I just want a woman singing the chorus and people rapping in the verses."
Yeah.
And he's like, "You ready to hear it?" I was like, "Oh," and he just played it off his phone. And
Mhm.
yeah, you were definitely there because we're going to record a promo. And yeah, and I was like, "Okay, okay, I can work with this." And now I can more than work with it. I absolutely love it. So
Yeah,
it's
it's a
really cool.
great song, great song. Speaking of that match at Crystal Palace, how did it feel when Tony Khan was there, and the crowd were chanting, "You signed the wrong guy"? Like, what was it like listening to that when you're facing Will Ospreay?
That I was like, perfect. I was so grateful for the fans. I don't think I've ever been more grateful to the fans. If you're asking for a chant, the UK fans, that's what they do. That's what we do. We find some kind of football-based chant, use the melody, and for them at some point to think to say that chant to Tony Khan while he's there, to point at him as it's happening, I was like, if I turn and stare at him, am I gonna get in trouble? I don't care. I'm gonna do it because I'm in the moment. So it was a really, 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 really cool moment.
Did you know that him and Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy were coming? I like just before your match, I went to the bathroom and the bathrooms there were like right beside the locker room. And I pretty much like headbutted Tony Khan. Like we were like walked right into each other. And I was like, that's so embarrassing. Like, because I had no idea, like of all the times to just try and find the bathroom, like you walk right into Tony Khan. I was like, oh, I look like a weirdo now. But did you know him?
That's it.
Him and
That's the
Darby.
worst time to ask for a handshake. So I heard he was coming, I think maybe the day before,
Yeah.
which is again, I was very nervous for this match more than any other match. That Will Ospreay match, I was very, very nervous for it. So
Mhm.
when I heard he was coming, I was like, oh, perfect, lovely.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Darby Allin, Orange Cassidy were gonna turn up. I saw the photos of them at Craven Cottage. So then I saw the speculation. And it was only until I got to the venue that I heard that Orange Cassidy would be in a scramble defending the international
So
title. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. That's great. That's cool. It's more eyes on the product. It's more interest on this match that people are interested in. And yeah, it just made me think, okay, I've got to give the best performance possible because I think maybe Tony Khan has. I don't know if he's actually seen me wrestle live. Maybe he did at one of those Rev Pro shows. I'm not sure, but maybe this is his first time. Maybe he definitely heard about me from many people. So I just knew I have to give my best performance no matter what.
what was it like for you kind of ending your story with Osprey in Rev Pro? Because it's been such a long story, and then to end it with Will's final match in the Crystal Palace venue. How did that feel? Was it a fitting end to everything you've been through?
100%, 100%. The fact that the story created wasn't really manufactured
Mhm.
too much the way most things are in pro wrestling. And it was the thing I enjoyed about it the most was that it was primarily about the professional wrestling and who is kind of the better professional wrestler on that night. So we didn't need to add, it didn't need to be like a cage match, or we didn't need to do no DQ. We wanted to try and our best to still make it be about the professional wrestling match and the emotions that came with that, and me wanting to prove that I'm good enough, because legitimately that's what it is. I was just trying to prove to Will, you need to know that I am good enough to be in the spot that I'm at. So for us to naturally tell that story through the 3 wrestling matches that we had, and for it to kind of, I like the interesting turn that it took where I became the champion without beating him. I think that's kind of a cool way that it happened, where I became champion without beating him. So then there's an asterisk with my name, and I need to defeat him as champion to kind of validate my title reign.
Yeah.
Uh, that really helped make, I believe, also make my title reign way more prestigious by having the match where it was, with him, it being his last match. Again, another thing that he didn't need to do. He was already signed. He could just start wrestling for AEW as soon as he signed the contract months and months ago. But for it to be a thing for Will to say, and I need to wrestle Michael Oku before I leave, it's an absolute honor for sure.
Mhm. We talked a lot about AEW and Tony Khan, but have you ever had any talks with WWE?
Ooh, I haven't actually. I haven't, not nothing formal. The most I've had in terms of a conversation. Oh, no, I was gonna say I spoke to William Regal, but I think he might have been in AEW at the time actually. So I don't think that counts. But well, he's in WWE now, so who
Yeah.
knows? But what was cool about when I bumped into him, it was on WrestleMania weekend, is that he recognized me from the Will Ospreay match from 2022. So
Yeah.
he had already watched it. I have heard stuff about Regal. So people told me, just so you know, Regal has his eyes on everything.
Mhm.
So I guess that was evidence of it. So nothing really from WWE, but at the same time, if I do hear something, I'm willing to listen to what they say.
Do you feel like being on this scene, the British scene, that you're seeing less wrestlers getting a look in with WWE since they ended NXT UK? Because I feel like I don't see as many going forward now.
I think that was the one clear positive of NXT UK was that was the route. If you were looking to go to WWE, okay, here is a route.
Mhm.
More so than just like, oh, just wrestle the best you can, and maybe someone will give you an email one day. At
Yeah.
least there was a route of, okay, here's a UK base for WWE. You can go there, and they will pick out the ones who they see something in. Um, you can make the argument that, if you look at the ones who are on the main roster, I mean, Gunther's the world champion.
Mhm.
They probably might have found their way to WWE anyway. Pete Dunne would have probably found his way to WWE anyway. But at least there was at least a trail for others who, I think Pretty Deadly is probably a good example of who it benefited really well, of like them getting to see them in this setting of NXT UK, and then seeing they could do more of them on the main roster. However, like, I think in general, it's difficult for British UK wrestlers to get to a major company, because yes, there's AEW when they do Wembley Stadium, and yes, they're going to do the Cardiff tapings, but it's still an American company, and we don't have a major wrestling company here in the UK. So the indies are our major wrestling companies. So until we have our own major wrestling company, I think it will be tough for us to then compete properly with the American companies, because that's how it works.
Yeah.
If one company has interest, then the other companies have interest in you. But they need to just see that you're at this level of performer and at this level of wrestler because you're on TV. So hopefully maybe that can happen one day. I'd love for that to happen where we have our own proper UK deal. But until then, us indie wrestlers, we just have to kind of keep doing our thing here, hopefully try and get our name out there in the US, and then see who comes calling.
Yeah, it feels like right now, especially with how WWE is, that there is like a bit of a wrestling boom happening. Not that I want to like say that and jinx it or overblow it, but definitely with WWE going to Netflix, it feels like things can only get bigger, and I do hope that that like filters down to the UK, and the UK can get back in that position of like if you had a UK promotion on TV or something, like that would be so cool.
It's so interesting, right? Because that's just that's business. That's business economics. That's how it works, right? Where like if the market leader is doing well, it
Yeah.
normally trickles down, then the entire industry does well. But what's interesting about that is, to me, it feels like the rise, the existence of AEW, and I think the boom of the indies in the UK and the US, I feel like it happened because WWE was on a downturn
Yeah.
and people weren't really enjoying it. So they found an alternative.
Mhm.
So now that they've kind of got their ducks in the row, so to speak, and just they're
Yeah.
on fire, it feels you can't deny that.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, will it now be the opposite, where now the indies are going to be dying and AEW is going to, well, the AEW is going to be affected by it.
Mhm.
So I hope that that does happen where, because they're doing well, everybody's talking about wrestling. And hey, you know what? This weekend was really a strong weekend for European wrestling. That York Hall show being sold out. WXW doing a big, like a Royal Rumble type show, and it was mostly full of their homegrown talent. They didn't really bring much people in. That did really good numbers in Oberhausen. And then, goodness gracious, I mean, OTT as well. Like they did their stadium show, and then they're announcing the Judgment Day are coming as well. So
Mhm.
these things do help. And again, back to these wrestlers not needing to do this, I think it says something when they're wanting to come to these promotions to want
Yeah.
to be part of it. I think it's not just them thinking, let's give them a bone, let's help them. I think they're seeing that things are getting a bit exciting on the indie scene and they want to be a part of it too.
So I have to ask you about Amira. She's such a big part of your act. If I'm not mistaken, was like the first time she kind of got involved for your match with Osprey in like late 2022, was it? Because I remember doing the in-ring thing with Osprey where I gave him he had the tickets that were for you, for your family. Was that like the first time like she was really involved?
Yeah. That was the very first time. She was sitting with my family on the other side of the barrier, but front row. And then, of course, the stuff involved with the spot of her being dragged in
Yeah.
and her being involved. That was the first time we had really addressed the two of us were together. The,
Mhm.
the thing is, the Rev Pro fans kind of knew that we were together because she was already going to the shows and she was fairly visible
Yeah.
while I was wrestling and fairly vocal while I was wrestling. So I think as well, I think that's even how it continued for it to be for her to be my official manager. I feel like Andy just saw her and was like, "You're doing this anyway. You're making sure you're at his matches and are screaming, and people are looking at you. You might as well just do it beside the ring and right there at the apron, and let's make it an official thing." The first time she was my official manager was, oh, I think ironically when I wrestled Luke Jacobs in Manchester,
Mm.
where I lost the cruiserweight title early, like later on that year in 2022. That was the first time she'd actually walked to the ring and was my manager.
You have to have like a serious, so Andy says go do it on screen, but do the two of you think like, okay, hang on, we're actually putting our relationship in storyline now, like on is that a bit scary?
Oh yeah, I said no many times. It was not like a yeah, whatever you say. If
Yeah.
that's what the script says, oh no, I just get to say no. Well, I was like, because of all the things that kind of come with that and putting yourself out there publicly, I try my best, especially with my social media, not to be very I try not to be very public with my private life.
Mhm.
I don't let people know where I'm eating or where I'm having coffee, or if I'm posting that it's because I've left there 2 days ago and just so you can't track what I'm doing. So for it to be a thing where it's like this relationship that is part of your private life, we're now going to implement it into your wrestling career and your wrestling act. And I had very like loads of concerns of if it could negatively affect me too, because does it help what my character is perceived as now? Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm an underdog babyface. Does it change that when you have when you have a valet who's there on your side, and as a babyface, you rarely see a, a, a manager by the
Yeah.
side of a babyface. So most matches might be technically 2-on-1. If I'm wrestling a heel, actually, it's two of us against one of him. So we really tried to figure out as well how it wouldn't affect my babyface run whilst she was still adding on. And I think we found now where it's, I think not that it's perfect, but I really feel like we've got a great thing going where
Yeah.
it's now you very, very unique that no one, I don't think I can think of, I can't think of anyone who's doing what we're doing the way we're doing it. So we're really trying our best to keep riding that as far as we can.
For sure. As much as I want to see you on Dynamite, I really want to see a fellow Belfast accent on Dynamite with a
Of
mirror.
course.
It would pop me so
But
much.
it's the same as many people. I completely, people will be disappointed if I'm there on my own, and I
Mhm.
will be too. So I absolutely, if I debut anywhere, if I'm popping up anywhere, I want a mirror right beside me for sure.
So before All In, you have your match with Luke Jacobs at the Copper Box, and there's, I'm sure, a ton of fans that are like getting to know you through stuff like the MJF match. So for those like less familiar, what can they expect if they turn up at the Copper Box before All In?
Yeah, so I would say that Luke Jacobs is probably, oh, that I'm not being nice to myself. There's a very good chance that Luke Jacobs is the best wrestler on the UK Indies right now.
Mhm.
And every time I've wrestled him, I have felt, oh yeah, yeah, I don't think there's anyone better than you. Other than myself. I have to say myself, of course. Anytime we wrestled 3 times, I really just think we have a chemistry that it just works.
Mhm.
And we're two different wrestlers. Our philosophy in wrestling, like our core beliefs on what we think wrestling should be, are different. But when they come together, they just gel perfectly. And so even though we butt heads in that sense, in the ring, I think magic happens. So I feel like that's why we've gotten to where we were, where Andy's thinking, okay, this is the biggest show we're going to do. There will be casual people who don't know Luke Jacobs. And Luke Jacobs takes a lot of influence from All Japan Wrestling. He takes a lot of influence from New Japan as well. Obviously, he had the match last year of Ishii, which I think stole the show. And he that's how he wrestles. He's a bruiser. He is very explosive, which is deceptive for his size. Um, Meanwhile, I'm good at getting beat up. So I think that's the reason why like we go so well together. I'm good at getting beat up. He's good at beating people up. So come and see the two of us who I think are on the top of our game, prove to people, because we've now got a point to prove. If people are going to be like, why are these two guys the main event when there's Zack Sabre Jr., Hechicero, when there's all these other big names coming from New Japan and everything in between? We're going to show them why when they buy a ticket to the Copper Box.
You're also the Jericho Cruise Oceanic Champion.
Yes.
You beat Matt Cardona for that. I read in Cage Match that you defended it in Leicester a few months ago. How does that work? Do you how does that work that you defend the Jericho Cruise title in Leicester?
So the truth is, uh, I won the title. I'm still on the cruise. It's the last, I think I won it on the last night of the
Mhm.
cruise. And so there's one more show. I don't think I'm on the evening show, but I just get to watch the show and enjoy it. And it's in the wrestling show. There's loads of stuff happening on the cruise, but then the wrestling show was in the evening was the last one that had like Speedball and Jericho, which is still the wildest thing I've ever seen. Um, but then after that, obviously there's a party. It's, you're on a cruise. There's different places where people are partying. There's karaoke. There's bands playing. There's like Jericho on. He has another band that I did not know about, and he's playing a set as well after wrestling. And I'm just having time of my life, drinking one hand, everything. And as I'm walking to one place to another, I bump into Chris,
Mhm.
and he's talking to me there, and he says like, well done, like you're great, you're doing great things. He's just saying a lot of nice things to me. Then he says, and that belt, You take that belt wherever you want. You take it wherever you want to go, and you can defend it wherever you want to defend it. I don't care if you defend it in Grimsby, defend it wherever you want. And then he said it one more time. Remember what I said? Grimsby. If you want to defend it there, defend it in Grimsby. And it's like, oh, okay, okay. So I never really found the right time when I would defend the title, but then I was wrestling Gene Money, and he just brought up in a promo that I'm the king of the seamen. And then I said, you know what? That's a good enough reason. That's a good enough story to defend the title. So then screw it, title on the line. And so the Jericho Cruise Championship has been defended in Leicester.
Wow, dude, you need to get yourself to Grimsby though. Obviously, there's something
Of
there.
course, right? Yeah, naturally. I think there's a promotional. Is it BW or R? I think they run in Grimsby.
Mhm.
Well, if they're hearing this now, they know that Chris Jericho has specifically said that it's okay if I defend the title then.
Finally, as a British wrestler, like someone that grew up watching wrestling but then wanting to get into wrestling, what what is actual success to you in this business with where you are now in your career? Like what does success mean to you?
You mean how
That's
do I measure it?
yeah,
Or
that feels like a really deep question to end on. Been
yes.
laughing about Grimsby, but I
Yeah.
mean, like, is success like I have to make it to AEW or WWE, or is it something else?
For me, the I feel like the lovely answer, the like TikTok inspirational answer
Mm.
will be as long as I'm happy and
Yeah.
I'm loving what I'm doing. And that is very important, 100%. But I think it needs to be me enjoying and loving what I'm doing, plus being able to make a comfortable living with it.
Mhm.
I'm at the point right now in my career on the indie scene, being on the top of the scene, where wrestling is able to pay a lot of bills, but just it's like
Mhm.
borderline because I'm still an independent wrestler. Unfortunately, there's like people who have contracts, and it's like an immediately there's a cliff in
Mhm.
terms of how much you can make. So for me, I would measure success by if I can comfortably with wrestling say, oh my gosh, I can start a family. Oh my gosh, I can buy a house. Those two things are the things I want to do. I want to have a family. And if I can do that through professional wrestling, be it with this company here, this company there, if it's with CMLL, if it's in Japan, if it's in the US, or even if in some way it's just through doing the indies in the UK, then I'll be over the moon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Michael. It's been great.
Very philosophical.